What would be a funny thing to say to a surgeon before anesthesia kicks in 5 seconds later? If I don't make it through this, tell my wife I want her to be buried alive with me. If I don't make it through this, tell my wife I said, hello. They had a thing checking my heart, and it fell off and it flatlined. I told them, God dang it, you killed me. Quick, we're losing me. As they were pushing the drugs, they asked me to count backwards from 10. All I could say was, no. The room erupted in laughter, and I was out. Frickin' make me, doc. Honestly, I just want to know if anyone's ever made it to 0 on that count. I'm not sure I've ever made it past 7, and I was halfway blacked out even for that. The stuff those doctors give you is nothing to mess around with. I'm not even surprised this commenter was out like a light within seconds of giving a one-word answer. If anything, I'm just surprised he actually remembers it. I had to have a pilonidal cyst removed from my arse crack and can remember giggling like a madman because I asked the entire operating room, so, who drew the short straw and has to shave my arse? When I got my wisdom teeth out, the dentist's office was right next to a funeral home. I told the guy that if anything went horribly wrong, they could just take me next door. Mother and doctor were not amused. To the surgeon and nurse, I just want you both to know, good luck. We're all counting on you. Surely you can't be serious. For anyone who doesn't get this joke, go watch the movie Airplane. It's a classic. I definitely wasn't expecting to see it referenced here of all places, but it's always a welcome reference, regardless of where it pops up. If anyone disagrees, you can find me in the parking lot after the video. Patient, knock knock, medical staff, who's there? Patient, nobody, medical staff, nobody who. Classic exit. My wife went to the dentist last weekend. After several shots of numbing, she sang to him, I can't feel my face when I'm with you. To a dentist's credit, without batting an eyelid, he replied in full voice, 'Cause I numbed it. You mean last weekend? I said to my doctor during my wisdom teeth extraction, Doc, don't start, I'm still awake. To which he said, we are already done. Those drugs are legit. If you've never had your wisdom teeth out, you're missing out on one heck of a ride. Stories like this are actually pretty common. In fact, they warn you before your appointment that you'll need to have a ride home because you won't be fit to drive yourself. When they're done, they roll you to the car in a wheelchair. You're loopy for hours after that. If they'd release whatever they give you for over-the-counter use, we wouldn't have brainiacs out there munching Tide Pods ever again. Right before I went under to have surgery on my septum, I was about to start counting backwards before they put the mask on. Does anyone need anything while I'm out? The last thing I remember was an OR full of people hysterically laughing. I'm going to need to get surgery so I can use this. Waking from anesthesia one time, I heard someone say, his blood pressure is a little high. Then I mumbled, that'd be the anesthetist's assistant's fault. They then, kind of startled, asked quickly, why is that? Becoming slightly more coherent, I continued with, she's really hot. They all laughed and said, he'll be fine, and released from theater. I have no problem believing this story because I swear those anesthesiologists get the most attractive assistants they can find. I've had a few surgeries, and it's the same thing every time. They put you under right when you've never wanted to be more awake. Maybe doctors took an oath not to harm you physically, but that sure doesn't stop them from messing with your head every chance they get. Awful lot of white people in here. Me after being sedated for a colonoscopy. This is even funnier if OP's also white. Wow, I actually have a relevant story that happened recently. As I was getting ready to go under, they were placing a device in my mouth to keep me from biting down on the scope they were going to use for the endoscopy. Think medical ball gag, but a hard plastic ring instead of a ball. As the gal was placing it in, I asked, wait, what's the safe word? I heard a good amount of laughing as the world turned to black. I tend to get massive erections while under anesthesia, but it's fine, just tape it down if it gets in the way. Apparently that's actually a thing. The blood flow is actually usually stopped by a muscle, and when that muscle relaxes, the blood flow increases and causes boner. So the anesthetic relaxes this muscle. This also explains the random boners you get in algebra in high school while you're bored. While this is definitely funny, I don't think we actually needed this deep of a medical explanation for why teenage boys suffer random arousal. You're sitting there trying to solve for X, and all you can think about is who Peggy Sue's having lunch with, and whether she'd be cool with you sitting at her table. So you can hold hands, obviously. What, did you think high school boys were fantasizing about something else? Get your mind out of the gutter. Yo, let them know if you see my phone in there. I'm getting my butthole operated on at the end of the year. Saved. When I got my wisdom teeth removed, Doctor: All right, so you feeling that sedative yet? Me: Yeah, a little bit. I bet I can stay awake, though. How long can people usually fight it? Doctor: Not long. Good night. Me: Blackout. I remember laughing when I woke up because that was the last thing I remember. I had just woken up after having my shoulder worked on. I was in and out of consciousness for a bit and just generally freaking whacked out. I guess I shifted in the bed and moved the blankets a bit and exposed myself as the nurse came in. She smiled and moved the blankets back. I apparently told the nurse, "You saw mine, do I get to see yours?" My wife was in the chair next to the bed. I remember thinking the nurse was smoking hot. I woke up and she told me she was flattered. I have no idea what I said. Well, OP didn't say anything about getting divorced, so I'm going to assume his wife was understanding. As well, she probably should be. Some people hear stories like this before getting surgery for the first time and worry about what they might say while they're spaced out. But the truth is, most people won't hold anything you say against you. It's well known enough at this point that the drugs mess you up pretty hard. So just say whatever you want. 9 out of 10 people will chalk it up to a funny story and leave it in the past. How do you keep a surgeon in suspense? I had broken my wrist and was being put under to have 4 pins inserted. They gave me my anesthesia through an IV. I felt coldness spreading up my arm and across my chest. The nurse asked how I was doing, and I said, "This must be what dying feels like." I heard her say, "Oh my God." Then I was out. My dad was in the middle of a surgery repairing some pretty nasty damage on his wrist after a skiing accident. He was under heavy anesthesia, but the surgeons were having serious trouble with the screws in his wrist, which apparently jarred him around enough to wake up. He noticed their struggles and managed to say, "Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey." Then he passed back out. I'm told that when I was out having one of my fingers patched up and another reattached after a table saw accident, I asked the surgeon if the drill he was using to put screws in my hand was a DeWalt or a Ryobi. Once a tool man, always a tool man. These are both pretty fantastic stories. They're also weirdly educational. To the uninitiated, it sounds like both of these patients must have had crazy levels of self-awareness to make the comments that they did. But that's actually true of most blackouts, regardless of the cause. A person who's blacked out isn't truly unconscious. They're still largely alert, having thoughts or making decisions as anyone else would, albeit while pretty impaired. They simply aren't forming new memories. That doesn't have any significant bearing on anything, just a fun fact for you to enjoy sharing at parties. I had to get some surgery that involved cutting open my head. Right before they gassed me, I said, "I should warn you, there's a spooky skeleton in there." The last thing I remember is his response of, "I'll try to look out for that." I was being put under for a wisdom tooth extraction a few years back, and it was the first time I've ever had anesthesia. They use injection method rather than gas, so they told me to watch the fluids going in so I could gauge whether I'd feel sleepy. I had this idea that I would say something like, "Oh no, doc, I've lost my eyesight," or something else preposterous. Before I could collect my thoughts, I just immediately muttered, "Well, shit," my voice progressively getting lower, and passed out. So after my dad had a triple bypass and was just waking up, and they had removed the breathing tube, I was in the room with him. I said something along the lines of, "Everything went perfect with your surgery, Dad. No problems." My dad, in his drug haze, said, "That is because I am a perfect specimen of a human male, and it couldn't have gone any other way." Nurses were cracking up. There's a man who knows the meaning of confidence, and honestly, that's how we should go into surgery anyway. I can only imagine how terrifying something like a triple bypass must be, but what I can't imagine is anybody living longer because they spent their last few waking moments before surgery paralyzed with fear. Even relatively common surgeries have gone wrong, so it's not like the fear is completely unwarranted. But if there is a chance these are your last few moments, then you may as well spend them enjoying whatever crazy cocktail the anesthesiologist has mixed up for you. My surgeon told me to think of a happy place. Then he asked me where it was. The Simpsons kicked in and I told him it was the happiest place on earth. Tijuana. I didn't stay awake long enough to see if he got the reference. Tahiti, it's a magical place. When my appendix burst, I was being wheeled in as the doc was getting ready, and I was about to pass out. He said, "Geez, this is rusty," and held up a scalpel. I could tell he was joking, and off I went to sleep. When I woke up, he came to check on me, and the first thing he said was, "Have you seen my watch?" I crap you not, he was a very funny man, and it really helped calm me down in a situation where I nearly died. We need more doctors like this. I'm sure it's not for everyone. Some people are scared, and the last thing they want is to think that the person charged with the task of saving their life isn't taking it seriously. But to put that into a slightly different perspective, your surgery isn't as unique an experience for your doctor as it is for you. It's something they do all the time. You're in qualified hands. If they're making jokes, then they're probably just doing it to try and put you at ease because they can't anesthetize an uncooperative patient. And they also know that laughter is the best antidote for fear. This OP had a doctor who recognized that true healing is about more than just treating the patient's symptoms. We should all be so lucky. Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of this video and have a wonderful day. I was being wheeled into emergency abdominal surgery once, and my girlfriend was with me. We were rolling down the hall, and they have the mask out to put me under, and I pause and say to her, "Don't let them touch my dong." The nurse smirked a little, and they put the mask on me. In somewhat of a panicked fashion, I pulled the mask off, stared up at my girlfriend, and with full weight and seriousness, told her, "They can look at it, but no touching." I heard the doctor laughing as the gas kicked in. This is particularly funny because they most certainly did touch your dong. With long surgeries under general aesthetic, you need a catheter, so you don't leak all over the sterile field. Sorry. There is another Skywalker. Last time I went under, as I started to fade, I said, "You're gonna have to drive. I'm fricked up." Probably came out, "You're gonna have to drive. I'm Method acting. I like it. Just before I blacked out, anesthetist said to me, "This is the stuff that killed Michael Jackson." I'd like to amend my earlier statement. At least the rusty scalpel joke was something the patient could visibly see was untrue. This one is legitimately just terrifying. Even if you know your surgeon, you probably don't have a relationship with the anesthetist, unless you get surgery uncommonly often. You'd have to work hard to telegraph that this is a joke, and then you'd still need to know something about Jackson's situation in order to not worry you'd meet the same fate. By all means, joke with your patients, but be tactful about it. Just because this OP took it well doesn't mean the next patient will. If something goes wrong and I go into a coma, don't you dare effing cut my coma beard. Yes, ma'am. I swear to God, if I wake up as RoboCop. When I had my wisdom teeth removed and was given general anesthetic, I apparently said, "If this is what being on drugs is like, sign me up." He went and told on me to my mother. I'm sure she was fine, but this actually does make me wonder if there are any protective parents out there who sincerely worry that anesthesia will legitimately lead to their kids getting hooked on illicit substances. I'd understand that fear with painkillers for obvious reasons, but do parents ever have this concern with surgeries? I doubt it, but I could easily be wrong. Any parents out there, feel free to share your thoughts on this in the comments. I actually did the same thing, but for both of mine. I managed to get out, "I'll see you in the future, doc," or something. Either way, once the drugs kicked in, I didn't care. That's heavy. A buddy of mine was having surgery done and went, "Rosebud," right as he passed out. The other way around. I was cracking jokes with the nurses and anesthesiologist before a big surgery, and everyone was laughing. Anesthesiologist turns to me and says, "Well, it's not fair that you're the only one not on anything," and then hit me with anesthesia, and I was out. For the record, my wife does not like it in the butt. Because I said this before my surgery. My wife is an OR nurse who works at the hospital I was in. I didn't remember saying this, but her coworkers remember it. Oh, I'm sure your wife remembers it too. I know I said that thing about how most wives can probably forgive most of what their husbands say under anesthesia. Then again, most husbands aren't saying it in front of all their coworkers. I feel sorry for this OP. He survived his surgery only to be given a life where he will never win a single argument ever again. That actually might be the life most married men get to experience, but this one for sure. Preop, Marco. Post-op, Polo. My twin owes me a big time for this one. Surgeon, mine too. I told them that I hadn't pooped this morning and that if I crap on them, it's their fault for scheduling the surgery at 6 a.m. Then I passed out. This is literally why they make you fast the night before a surgery. As someone else already pointed out to the commenter who didn't want the doctors touching his business, your surgery team is highly aware that bodily functions don't cease when you go under. So no need to worry. Even if you do manage to pinch a loaf on your surgeon, it probably won't even break the top 10 in his list of craziest OR experiences. I will use the top comment in my surgery tomorrow. We gotta make OP's comment a top comment. That way he confuses the surgeon. Similar, I had some kidney stones, and they had to go up there to unblock my parts, if you know what I mean. As I was waking up from anesthesia, I apparently asked, "How many people saw my pee-pee?" A few minutes later, as I was a little more coherent, I asked the nurse what's the craziest thing she heard from someone waking up from anesthesia. Her answer, "How many people saw my pee-pee?" Good times. When I was 15, I discovered that I could pull my foreskin back behind my tallywhacker head. Needless to say, my foreskin was so tight I opted for circumcision. My doctor, Dr. Lenz, was the funniest dude I've ever met. Told me my dong was going to look like Frankenweenie for a month or two, but it's cool. Anyways, I'm in the OR on Christmas Eve, and I feel the anesthesia starting to kick in, and before Dr. Lenz walks out, I shout/slur, "Doc, please, just take care of the little guy." And he stops, turns around, bows to me, and says, as if he were my own. I laughed once, then passed out. The standout detail in this story is just that OP scheduled an elective surgery for Christmas Eve. This guy must have been really dedicated to not having to spend the holiday with his family. Or he at least figured that if he did have to spend it with family, he could do it while hopped up on anesthetics, which honestly might be the most brilliant idea I've ever heard. With the holidays fast approaching, I might have to call my surgeon when I'm done with this video and see if there's anything he can find to lop off before the next family dinner. There are plenty of smart people on Reddit, but this one's a bona fide genius. Last time I went under, started to feel a sort of paralysis and couldn't move. Me. Whoa, did you give me something? Nurse. Yes, relax and don't fight it. Me. Okay, but you should sell this stuff in the gift shop. Everybody laughs. Surgeon. Are you okay? Me. Yeah, but I'm disappointed there's no cake. Surgeon, laughing. On the recovery notes, write, give the patient cake. Next thing I know, I'm waking up in recovery with a slice of chocolate cake on the table next to me. I asked for a tummy tuck while being wheeled in for a bowel resection. I said, while you're cutting it open, just cut some off. Then when I was done with my surgery, but still pretty messed up on drugs, I asked if I was skinny, and then cried when my doctor told me he didn't give me a tummy tuck. Same doctor, different procedure, terribly inappropriate joke. Had to have a colonoscopy, so they gave me some medication where I was awake. But it was weird. Anyways, I was feeling silly and told him, first time doing anal on camera, and I'm not even getting paid. I asked for a tummy tuck after both of my C-sections. Doc gave me the same answer each time. I made it work. I didn't make it pretty. I hope that patient had a good relationship with her doctor. At the very least, good enough for her to trust that he was just playing along. Otherwise, that might be the coldest response I've ever heard. Hilarious, but cold. As the anesthesiologist was putting me under, he just said I'd start to feel sleepy soon. I asked him, aren't I supposed to be counting back from 100 or something? He replied, I don't know, I must have skipped that class. Being an anesthesiologist must be awesome, as you can always get the last word in. Before going under for wisdom teeth, the doctors said I might feel funny. They pushed the drugs and asked if I felt any different. My butthole, and only my butthole, began to itch like crazy, and it was hot, not warm, hot, like I just ate peppers with my arse. I told them my butthole is itching like crazy. The assistant was really bad at holding back a laugh. The doc resisted mightily, but he too succumbed to my newly discovered butthole emotions. They actually gave me some kind of drug that had the exact same effect when I had surgery. They warned me prior though, and I kind of laughed it off until it actually happened. This is definitely something I've never heard of before, and I'm weirdly enthralled by the science of how a side effect like this could even be caused, especially when it's your mouth they're trying to numb. I'm also a little curious as to how this OP has had enough world experience to guess what it would be like to shove peppers back there in the first place. Was this a dare they once experienced? Is it something that happened once as part of a bizarre cooking accident? Or did they just go to Yale? There's a more fascinating story here than the surgery, and I won't rest until I've heard it. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.